Hello and welcome to Ron Whitlock Reports. Guest on the program today, Senator Eddie Lucio, whose district is the largest coastal district of any state senator in the entire Lone Star State along the Texas Gulf Coast, and therefore would have more of an impact by the impact of any category storm, whether that be 1, 2, 3, 4, or just a tropical storm all the way from Brownsville all the way to just south of Corpus Christi. And Lucio, welcome to the program. Along with him, Carlos CASCOS. Welcome, Carlos CASCOS, County Judge for Cameron County, county seat in Brownsville, Republican County Judge, by the way. That gives the region and him quite a bit of influence, not only at the state capitol, but also in Washington, D.C., and also chairman of the Governor's Security Council. Welcome to the program. Reason we're here today at this round table is to talk about hurricane season. We're in the midst of hurricane season. We're told that many of us, you and I both, somewhat lackadaisical, taking it for granted that a storm's not going to hit us. But guys, can we really make that determination? Should we have much more miedo than we apparently do in getting ready for a storm? Senator?
I think so. If you weathered a storm down here in the past, there should be great concern. And of course, lately things have gotten worse. Storms have gotten worse. And people have died as a result of not being prepared and not preparing for it way ahead of time. So yes, I think there should be a great concern, and I hope that people take note of some of their personal responsibilities in preparing for such a storm.
Not only responsibilities for their own life, but also their pets, their friends, their neighbors, and their own family.
That's correct.
That will be taken into consideration, does it not?
Absolutely, and I think the judge has worked very hard, and I know, and his staff and those in Cameron County and Willacy County, Kennedy County, and Claybrook County are the 4 coastal counties that I represent. I think at the local level they are prepared to. They know exactly what they need to do. So I think the whole plan has to be put in place. But I think the most important factor will be taking personal responsibility as the head of a household and making sure that you're informed and you're ready to go.
Now, Senator Lucio, folks, was living in this region during Hurricane Beulah. He has been through a major storm, the biggest storm to impact on South Texas and northern Mexico in the last 40, 50 years. So we're going to get some of his recollections along with some recollections from County Judge CASCOS. Now, during Hurricane Beulah back in 1967, I was a young news director for radio station KRIO 910, The Gentle Giant. You're now seeing a somewhat more svelte version of yours truly, also a little bit younger at that particular point in time. And that was the time, Judge CASCOS, that the Valley really went through it 5 days. All the television stations, only 4 and 5 at the time, are off the air for the period because they did not have electrical power. The 3 Freedom papers, Herald, Star, and the Monitor, were not distributed for a 5-day period because of rising floodwaters. And so this little radio station, KRIO, was very, very important during that part to the South Texas region and its people. You were living here at the time. What do you remember about Hurricane Beulah as a young person, as you were 12 years old at that time?
I was 12 or 13 years old, and I think the sound that I recollect was that of chainsaws for days and days after the hurricane left us. There was just a lot of reconstruction.
You're now seeing half of Harlingen basically underwater and another half not underwater because there was a irrigation canal which basically kept the water from the arroyo, which had flooded because up valley, Hidalgo County IBWC levees failed, and that's why the Lower Valley, Cameron County, Harlingen in particular, had so much significant damage after Beulah when the floodwaters came, and that is because those Hidalgo County IBWC levees did fail, and all that water did come into Harlingen. Many of those houses had the actual dirt moved from under their concrete platform and they had fallen off into the arroyo. I'll never forget that as a young person, seeing the power of God and the power of rising floodwaters. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and I think that's what we need to keep in mind, that it's not so much the hurricane itself, but it's what that hurricane spawns. Tornadoes, there's 100 and some odd tornadoes that BEULAH created, storm surge, 20 inches plus of water over a very short period of time. And this was 41 years ago when a lot of our area was rural. A lot of our area was still sorghum and cotton fields and grain fields, etc. Today, a lot of those farming communities are now subdivisions. You've got concrete in place of dirt. The water's it's got no place to go. And that's, I think, the concern that we all have.
Back in '67, I was 21 years old. I was one of 10 kids then. I'm one of 10 kids still today. My mother calls us kids anyway. But my youngest brother, Richard Lee, who is now a mechanical engineer up in Minnesota, was 3 years old. And my dad had gone through the 1933 hurricane. That hurricane wiped Brownsville out. Just, half of it went into the river. Their home was wiped out and went into the river. So he was always afraid of hurricanes. And
half of it went into the river because Falcon Dam had not been built, and all those floodwaters came down and really took out and devastated Brownsville.
So my dad told Boynton Fleming, who was the sheriff at the time, and asked him permission to take his family to higher ground. And we all packed into a little car, a Pontiac, Le Mans, with bucket seats, all 12 of us, believe it or not. And we drove to Hondo, Texas. And then what happened there, we had tornadoes coming down all over the place. We drove to Laredo. And BEULAH, the eye of the hurricane, went right over the motel we got checked in. It's kind of funny, but it wasn't when we started driving back to the valley. I remember one of the bridges we went through washed away after we crossed it. We were listening to the news on the radio. And when we came back, KRIO helped us get all the way back to Brownsville. But we had to drive on sidewalks. We had to just maneuver ourselves back and forth until we got back to Brownsville. When we opened them up, we had boarded the house up. When we opened it up, it was sealed that it was so mossy and muggy, we had to clean the whole house, just wash it down.
So in retrospect,
Incredible.
did your parents make the decision to evacuate too soon, too late?
No, I think the evacuation on our part was just right, because we weren't here when the hurricane hit. We were up in the Hondo area. But hurricanes, as you know, attract tornadoes. And those tornadoes started coming down. I'm talking, they cited 10, 12 tornadoes. My dad hates tornadoes a little bit more than he does hurricanes. So we fled on. We went on to Laredo.
So you thought you were evading the hurricane by going south to
Laredo,
and that didn't work out either.
We just headed right back, and it hit us. But
because the eye of BEULAH went down into the mountains of northern Mexico, ultimately back out into the Gulf of Mexico, Judge.
I don't recall the amount of. There were some fatalities back then. I don't recall the number, but these are people in low-lying areas that obviously were flooded and drowned or got hurt.
And
when
the
they went out.
The fatalities come, right, fellas, from storm surge, from high winds, then the tornadoes, then falling power lines, falling trees, and things of that nature. And then the floodwaters, which come 4 or 5 days after. All of that is bad. Now, if you're a resident of South Padre Island, if the storm gets too close, that island is going to have mandatory evacuation, and they're going to cut off the power. That's what the rule was a couple of years ago. Is that still going to be the way it's going to happen, Judge?
That's still the rule. That's still the rule.
They're actually going to cut off the power to South Padre Island, and so you better have been gone because you're not going to be electricity.
Well, by this time, if that storm is on its way and South Padre Island is right in its path, the mayor of South Padre and I will talk and visit, and the ultimate call will be made to shut power off, for the safety of everyone. You are going to have people that are going to stay. I mean, that's just inevitably that's going to happen. As we were talking earlier, people just are very, very reluctant to evacuate because we've had numerous near hits. They believe they're false alarms, and I don't think that we're trying to overemphasize the importance of an early evacuation. So when it comes to the island, that would be the first place that people just get up and leave.
But after that, as you move inland a little further, people reside, let's say, in Port Isabel, Los Fresnos, inland 15, 20 miles. What should they be planning to do, Judge and Senator?
Well, the same thing. There's going to be an organized plan. There's a state plan that we're involved with that outlines the evacuation process, and this is something that we work on all year long. It's not anything that we start working on in January, February. December 1st of this coming year, we'll start planning for the next hurricane season like we did this prior year. And you know, the bottom line is that we've got to prepare, we've got to plan, and we have to, I guess, convince folks that they need to be ready as well. I think the Senator pointed out well, you know, that we need to be prepared to evacuate. We need to have a plan. And there's two ways to evacuate. You're either going to have an assisted evacuation, where you're going to go to a destination point, specifically San Benito, after you've gotten picked up by a bus at your hometown or whatever it is. You get processed there. The other option is that you go on your own. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. During this program, we need to emphasize what the 211 system is, and kind of highlight what that system really is. Okay.
Okay. Let's make sure we do that, especially when your emergency management coordinator Johnny CAVAZOS comes and joins us on the last segment, and we want you to make sure you stay tuned for that, because he's got some good video to show you what we could anticipate with storm surge based on how significant the storm is, how far inland that storm surge could go, and it could go all the way into the city of Harlingen, by the way, so stay tuned to that in the last segment. Buses in particular, you say we need 6,000 buses?
I think we need at least 6,000 according to figures that I have, but I think the state will
His governor's only offering 3,500?
Well, you know, we'll see what happens in the preparation process, but I think if you look at population and the needs involved, if you're to move 40 people per bus in the population, I have a little breakdown, for example, depending on the category of the storm. The category 1, you would have to evacuate 90,000 people. You would need 46,000 vehicles. I don't know how many buses involved, but it keeps on escalating. When you get to category 5, you're talking about 243. This is back in 2003. These are figures that were put together back then, 4 or 5 years ago. So let's say 250,000 people, yeah. You would need vehicles. I'm talking cars, about 130,000 cars. And the clearance time would be about 33 hours. So in terms of buses, and for those that special needs citizens, such as anyone needing transportation, those in hospitals, those that don't have a ride, those that need to be moved, you know, through air ambulance or ground ambulance, it's a substantial movement, and I think Cameron County is well prepared to meet the challenge, but I think it's going to have to. A lot of components are going to have to come together. I'm even thinking of visiting with the general at the State Guard this next week to talk about whether or not we're going to have access to state guardsmen. Texas State Guard is a volunteer guard. This is over and beyond the National Guard. I'm a member of the State Guard, so I'm going to be talking to the general along those lines. There are a lot of factors involved here, but in terms of transportation, you're talking, depending on the category of storm that's out there and the amount of time you have anywhere from 15 hours to 33 hours to prepare.
Now, Texas Governor Rick Perry got the praise internationally, the praise of many of his voters and other constituents here in the Lone Star State, because he, more than anyone else, and was really the first to put out his hand of welcome to the residents of Louisiana and the New Orleans area to come to Houston, come to the Astrodome, really provided a home safe haven for these evacuees. But is he prepared for this season for his own state? And are there enough buses planned under the governor's evacuation plan? And as far as you're concerned, Senator, and you, Judge CASCOS.
Let me tell you, 3,500 buses will, assuming 40 people, will evacuate about almost 150,000 people, 148,000 people.
So you think it's adequate in Senator Lucio?
No, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying is that you know, we have some estimates from the state as to how many folks we anticipate needing to evacuate. And I think that the message has to be that, as the Senator will point out, there are different types of transportation. You've got personal vehicles, you've got buses. You know, if 3,500 people, 3,500 buses will evacuate 150,000 people roughly. But we may need, obviously we're going to need more, because coupled with that, you have to factor in pets that are probably going to either sit on somebody's lap or take up a space of some sort. So that's going to be factored in. The buses that were available that we mobilized during Hurricane Dean came from as far away as Florida. So they were contracted. These were charter buses. These were not school buses that were being used to evacuate folks. These were charter buses. As a last resort, if there's a need for 500 or 1,000 more buses, then that's where we're going to have to go to the local school districts and utilize their buses as well. So do we need more buses? We probably do. But it's got to be based on an estimate of how many people we anticipate that are going to use those buses in order to have the proper inventory available.
For planning purposes, I believe you need to, you need to have something be categorized on a scale from 0 to 5. 0 being somebody that just needs a ride, and 5 being someone that needs to be moved from a hospital. So that's part of the planning process. It's going to be interesting. And let's remember one thing. From between now, actually, we're in hurricane season already. We started June 1st, and we have 6 months to go. But it'd be interesting what happens between now and when we start getting all these depressions building up in the Gulf, what we're going to be doing. But I can assure you that the judge and I and others will be working very closely together.
Our guest this segment, Johnny Cavazos, Emergency Management Coordinator for Cameron County, and Paul Cowan, Chief of Staff for Senator Eddie Lucio. Welcome, guys, to the program.
Thank you for having us, Ron.
A lot of people complacent about hurricane preparedness, making the decision whether or not they're going to evacuate. Your best advice to them would be, Paul, having been through Hurricane Beulah?
I'd listen to my local elected officials, okay, and just absolutely pay close attention to what they say, because they have the barometer on what's happening. Because when they know that storm's coming in, they know what. In other words, today we're predicting things a lot different than we were back in 1967 when Beulah was there. Well, Ron, we've really got things a little bit further advanced than we did then.
Extremely accurate. Weather forecasts today are accurate.
Accurate.
They were not accurate back then.
They're the ones that can tell you exactly. It's going to be bad, okay?
And like your senator said, if it takes 36 hours to evacuate, when they say to, you better get out on that highway and get to San Antonio, Dallas, wherever you're going, to get it done fast. Now, Johnny, as the Emergency Management Coordinator, you have video to share with the audience showing what the storm surge is going to be if, in fact, it is a Category 3, 4, and 5 storm. Can you kind of walk us through what the video that they're now seeing on the screen, assuming that it has the quality of storm that you're talking about?
Well, what you're seeing on the screen is a computer model that shows what storm surge is going to do if we have that perfect storm, if we have that Category 4 or 5 hurricane that makes a direct hit on Cameron County. And the first couple of slides, you'll see where the storm surge is about 4 or 5 feet, and what that does to South Padre Island, just 4 or 5 feet. And it's important to remember that in Hurricane Katrina, they had upwards of 40, 50 miles of storm surge, and storm surge that was as high as 30 feet. So we're talking about 4 feet over South Padre Island. Then I think in the next couple of slides you'll see where it grows to 7 feet and 15 feet, and what that does to not only South Padre Island, but what it does to Port Isabel, Los Fresnos, and the city of Brownsville. And the next slide it continues on. It'll show the airport in Brownsville. If we have upwards of 20-foot storm surge, no one's going to be flying in and out of the Brownsville airport. It'll be underwater. So that's important to note those things. We've got a plan to utilize the Harlingen and McAllen airports to fly in C-130s and C-17 aircraft to help us with the evacuation process of those 130, 150,000 people that we believe need assistance in evacuating.
There is a storm surge which could reach the city limits of Harlingen, correct?
Absolutely. If we had that,
And they're seeing that now.
they're seeing that now. If in a perfect scenario, where we have a perfect storm, a Category 5 hurricane makes a direct hit, and every hurricane is different. Every hurricane is different. But if we did have a hurricane that size, we could see storm surge as far north as Harlingen. Yes.
And also that would mean Raymondville también.
Absolutely. Raymondville is not out of the clear.
And how high would that storm surge be?
Well, again, it depends on what the category or what angle it hits us in. There's a lot of variables, a lot of factors.
How far inland did the storm surge go in Katrina and Louisiana, Mississippi?
Well, in parts of Cameron Parish, Louisiana, we had, storm surge as far north as 40, 50 miles. So, that's important to remember.
So, a 40, 50-mile inland storm surge would carry it all the way to Weslaco?
Could be, even further north than that. The other thing to think about is that not only the storm surge, but those high winds are going to do some pretty nasty things to our homes and people that lived through Hurricane BEULAH 41 years ago. I mean, their homes are 40 years older. We're all 40 years older, so we gotta have a plan.
211. What does 211 mean, and why is that so important in the time of a hurricane evacuation period?
211. If you want a free ride to safety, the Cameron County and the state of Texas, prepared to take you, your family, and your pet to shelters up in San Antonio and adjoining counties that will be hosting us. But 211 is a simple way to register so we know where you are, so we could take you to safety the minute that we hear this hurricane is going to threaten our coastline of Texas.
And if you live in Hidalgo County, here's your message on what you need to do in Hidalgo County.
Hi, I'm J.D. Salinas, your Hidalgo County judge. Hurricane season is here, and we're taking the lead to make sure our community is ready. But you too play a critical role in making sure you and your family stay safe.
The best time to prepare for a hurricane is right now. Learn about our local emergency plans, warning signals, evacuation routes, and shelters. If you can't evacuate on your own and don't have any help, register for a ride now by dialing 211. Stock your home and vehicle with emergency supplies, and stay tuned to your local radio or television stations for updates.
We are your front line when disaster strikes, working hard to keep you and your family safe. But we need you to do your part, because remember, we are always
stronger together.
You can go to any of your Freedom Papers and get a copy of this, their guide for storm prep, or just go to any one of the 3 Freedom Papers websites and they'll direct you to Storm Prep. Gives you all information you'll need on how to get ready for hurricane season, whether you should evacuate or not. Things take care of you and your family. Fellas, thank you for appearing on the program. Thank you for joining us. Till next time, adios.